Well, welcome everyone to the first of a series of conversations that we're having with members and authors of the University Professors Press. And this one is with Doctors Nathaniel Granger Jr. and Louis Hoffman on one of the University Professors Press first books on poetry, Stay Awhile. So let me ask you, what was your inspiration for this book, a book on poetry, or a book of poetry?
Well, this book started out of a few different processes. That one of them was just the recognition. Nathaniel and I teach a lot together, do presentations and trainings that tie on multiculturalism and diversity, and we just noticed that we both were often using poems in our presentations, and so that was one of the aspects. And one of the things that really impacted me, that led me to begin talking with Nathaniel about the idea of a book, was a conversation I had when I was visiting back home, and we were talking about some issues relevant to multiculturalism and diversity. And it started off where we were kind of debating about different issues. The people I was speaking with had a bit of a different perspective. And then I noticed we weren't getting anywhere. And with debates, what often happens is we just start butting heads more. And often people get more grounded in their own position instead of listening to others. And so I decided in this conversation to switch things up and tell a story. And when I did that, I noticed the two gentlemen I was having the conversation with, they started to listen a little bit differently when I shared this story. And the poems are a little different than stories. They, at least a lot of the time, poems do often tell a story. And so when we started putting this book together, we really were looking for poems that told a story, an accessible story. And that was really important to us, that was accessible, with the idea that we hope that by using poetry that told stories, that shared people's experience, we could change the type of conversations we were having from something that is just debating over facts and intellectual ideas to something where we're listening to each other and each other's stories, which is really a deeper source of meaning in a lot of ways. So we were wanting to shift to more of a narrative, more of a storytelling, more of a creative place, hoping that it would promote a deeper form of listening.
Well, certainly poetry evokes the emotions in a conversation, and I think that's something very important. And certainly the content is very emotional as you read through the book, but there's a lot of things that go into a book in producing a book. The cover artistry, the name of the book, the title of the book, how did that come about, and why is that important?
The name is very, I was very passionate about the name. I'm very passionate about the word, the book itself, but the name was very intentional. In that many years ago, I was in a multicultural class at UCCS with Dr. Barry Ham, and early on in the class, we decided to not hold class in the classroom, but to meet at one of the students' home in south of Castle Rock. And that student, I would never forget, her name was Shannon. And Shannon was very passionate about multiculturalism and diversity. She was so passionate that when we get into these discussions, that she wouldn't want to end. And she would always say, stay a while, have another glass of wine. And so even when the conversations got heated, Shannon would say, well, just stay a while and just have another glass of wine. And after that semester was over, Shannon and another student, Shay, was driving to Texas, and they were in a fatal car accident. But I would never forget Shannon's passion for diversity, and those words just resonate with me. Stay a while, have another glass of wine. And so I thought that would be fitting for this book, and that to honor Shannon, who was passionate about diversity, and for the reader, for the book, we wanted the reader to just take this book and just stay with it, stay a while with this book, and so that's where the name came from.
And I know that you want this to be a book that is used by people, so you have exercises at the end of the book on what to do with the poems and different ways of approaching the poems that are included in the book.
Yes, we wanted to not only, we didn't want the book just to be one to be read, but we wanted it to be experiential. We wanted people to be involved with this book, and so that was pretty important too, that people would participate.
So as you go through the book, there are certain themes that are evoked throughout the book, one of which is cultural empathy, which requires that participation and really that putting of oneself into the perspective of the other person. The poems range from talking about race and gender diversity, poetry about economic diversity, as you address homelessness in there, about privilege. There's something for everyone that everyone can find something that's going to touch them in this book.
Yeah, and that was intentional. With the Poetry Healing and Growth series, we it started with this book, and some of the things that we thought about when creating this book have really carried over through most of the series. And one of those is we wanted poems that were accessible, that were diverse both in style, so it's many different styles, and by a variety of different authors. And we haven't sought out professional poets, though I think a lot of the poems that have ended up in Stay Awhile and other books in the series are certainly of the quality that could be published. But we were more concerned about accessibility and that connection, because that's what helps us to get that understanding. I think it's more effective when we're talking about poetry and that healing and growth process. It's more effective to have a poem that is emotionally accessible and the content's accessible than it is to have a poem that is of a really high art form, in a sense. That obviously some poems can meet the standards of both, but we were more concerned about what's going to really impact people. That's when we start seeing the conversations change, when you start understanding how someone from a different culture experiences the same situation and how they experience life, how it can be different for me to walk down the street as a white privileged male and never have to worry about much of anything, versus other people that may not be their experience. That's, I think of my wife and sons a lot with this, that I know their experience isn't the same, that of always being able to feel safe wherever they are. And that's a form of my privilege. And it's been, for me, over the years, been a powerful thing to get a deeper experiential understanding of what individuals from other cultures experience that I've been sheltered from because of my privilege. And so that's one of the things we really hope that this book will do, is help for people to have empathy with people that come from a different cultural background and experience the world differently because of that, so that we can start communicating from a place of understanding instead of debating and just arguing from within our own stance.
And poetry, as we mentioned, really does evoke these emotions, and they really come from the depths of a person's soul. So I know, Nathaniel, one of your favorite poems, one of my favorite poems is Dat Dere book. When we talk about cultural empathy and cultural humility, it's really understanding the language that people use as well. And I know that language is something that's very important to you in crafting your poems. And this is a poem that you wrote about basically generational oppression.
Well, absolutely. This poem derived. I was sitting at a bar, at my brother's bar in his home, and we were in Chicago, and we had just become sickened by the crime in Chicago, the black on black crime, and we were discussing perhaps moving my mom out of Chicago, moving her to Colorado, and we were just sickened by the black on black crime, but being from Chicago and being a part of it, we made light of it, and we were just kind of laughing about it, like, oh, they killing me, they're just killing me. So we were laughing, cause, just having a good time. But then something hit both of us at the same time, and I could see his eyes water and my eyes watered, and I said to him, I said, Larry, I said, it's really sad that that so many of these African American youths, they know how to break down a weapon, and they know every drug, and they know the streets, but many of them can't read. And in the conversation, Larry said, well, that goes back to slavery. And from that, this poem derived that, yes, it goes all the way back to a time even before we were a free nation, that we were conditioned that reading, to be able to read was a crime, and if you were educated, and if you could read, it could even cost you your life. And so I think that's been passed down from generations, and that a premium was not placed on the ability to read, and that your life would be put in jeopardy.
Now, Dr. Granger, I've heard you speak at Martin Luther King memorials, and you really give a passionate view of his life and his story. Can you give us a passionate experience of your poetry here?
Sure, I'll try to do that while sitting down, because this is one where I have to really move. And so this is a parent walks in and catches their child reading. What you doing? Put that book down. You's gonna get us all in trouble. Who learned you how to read anyway? Miss Polly. You tell Miss Polly, don't she ever learn you how to read no more. You's gonna get us all in trouble. Master said, the biggest sin for a Negro is the sin of learning. Master said, Negroes ain't supposed to be learned. Master said, Negroes supposed to be trained, just like that strong mule out back, and like that mare over there, likes all the other animals on this here plantation. Master said, it's right there in the good book. You's gonna get us all in trouble. You's be better off siring the master's handmaid than to get caught reading from that there book. My daddy couldn't read, my mammy couldn't read, I's can't read, and I's be damned if I's allows one of mine's to read from that there book. If the master don't kill you, I'll kill you myself, so help me God. You's gonna get us all in trouble. You's gonna get us all in trouble.
Wow. Just sends chills. And I want people to know that that's just a sampling of what goes into this book. I mean, we have Louis, your poetry, I'll Drink to Judgment, really is about homeless people and how they view themselves on the street. And I know that this probably contributed to another book in the series as well, the Poetry, Healing, and Growth series. But what was your inspiration for that poem?
I was living in Alameda, California at the time with my family, and we were on this neighborhood bulletin board. And when you drive into Alameda, Alameda's an island, and you have to drive along Oakland to come into Alameda. And there is a lot of people experiencing homelessness that live by the bridge there. And on the bulletin board, there are a lot of people complaining about this, and it really bothered Heatherly, my wife, and I. And then there was one gentleman that said, "I wish there was some type of pesticide at Home Depot that you could get to just get rid of all of them once and for all." And we were horrified to hear this and to read this, and so it was the night that I read that post, and I told Ted Lynn, said, I feel like I have to find a way to respond to this, and I did find a way online to respond to it, but I first needed to process the emotions, and that's one of the things that poetry often can help do. It can help process our experience and take it from this very raw pain into something that is meaningful, that's powerful, sometimes even that can help inspire change in ourselves as well as others. And so this poem, I was really trying to put myself in the position of someone. And, it's something I've thought about often through my life, that I've never experienced homelessness myself, but I've recognized without some of the privilege and protections that I've had, some of the bad decisions I've made could have easily led to something where I didn't have a place to live. And I think that's true for a lot of people. I wonder sometimes if that's not part of why it's hard for people to think about the issue of homelessness, is because we don't want to think about the possibility that we could end up in a situation like that. But the hope of this poem was to really help people understand a little bit about that experience. And certainly there was many things in there. I've throughout my professional career have often had people that have experienced homelessness as clients. I've had students that have experienced homelessness, and also have made a point of at times just sitting down and having conversations with people that were experiencing homelessness, instead of just giving them money, invited them to a meal or something like that before, and having those conversations. So there were a number of inspirations across my life, but the more proximal one was that experience there.
A lot of these poems are very weighty and heavy, but one of the other things that comes out across in this book is that some of the poets intermingle that with certain humor as well, to sort of give it a little lifting up, a little lightness to it. And one of those poems, I think, is a poem written by, I think it's one of your children, called Stereotyped.
Yes. Aaliyah wrote that poem, and she's actually did a spoken word with that poem, which I was very impressed with that. We were very impacted by that at the one of the SHP conferences, where she did a spoken word with stereotypes.
Yeah, it's a great poem to read, but if you ever get to experience Leah reading the poem just comes alive in her performance in some new ways.
Well, maybe we can get her over here sometime and do a podcast with her as well. So this book really encompasses multiculturalism, pluralism, understanding different cultures, and you really need to immerse yourself in it to get that feeling, get that emotion going for yourselves. Anything else you'd like to say about the book?
Well, many of as Lewis mentioned previously, that we weren't looking for professional poets, and many of the people who wanted to present had to be almost coaxed into presenting a poem or writing a poem. And I remember different ones saying, I'm not a poet, and I don't know how to write a poem. But then when they wrote the poem, they found it very therapeutic, and they put their emotions on paper, and to see people light up and come alive after being almost stuck or dead in whether issues around LGBTQ or multiculturalism. It seemed to almost work as almost like a catharsis when they were able to express themselves in writing. And so I just found that most rewarding.
I know about a decade ago, Lewis and I were in China working with the existential conferences over there, and before we did that, we had a number of students classes that we would do, and one of the exercises that I was running was an exercise where I would try to get the people that were involved either writing poetry or doing some drawing, and one of the persons said, "I'm a cowboy, I don't write poetry," and so that was his first poem that he had written ever. And I see that he's also a contributor in the book, so I'll just let folks read the poems and they can see, yes, these are poems that come from a true life experience.
Yeah, I think a hope would be that people read the poems and get something from the poems, but also that it inspires them to write their own poems about multiculturalism and diversity, but also just about our own journeys and healing. Our stories often can be healing to ourselves and to others. And a lot of the people that contributed poems here, as we've talked to them over the years, have talked about how healing writing the poem was, and to be able to share that healing with others so others can join into it is a powerful thing. So we're very proud of the book. It was our first book that we worked together on a poetry anthology, and we think that it turned out well and has some possibility really to make an impact in people's lives and in our society.
So this was the first poetry book that University Professors Press published, and it became the cornerstone, if you will, for a series of poetry books called Poetry, Healing, and Growth. And where can somebody get this book if they want to read it, if they want to immerse themselves in it?
Well, you can get it. It's available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. It's available in Kindle form and should be available in other ebook formats in the near future. And certainly, it's always great if you can buy it from the University Professors Press website. That's something that helps support both the press and the authors when you buy directly from the publisher. So there are a wide variety of places that you can get it, and we hope that you purchase and enjoy it.
And finally, Nathaniel, is there a poem that you want to leave us with that might inspire us?
I can't think of one. They're all so inspiring, and I can't think of one because I love each one. And these were very intentionally selected out of maybe 1,000 poems. I don't know, but quite a few poems. Let's see here. Yes, there is one. The Palestinian Mama, I think that is one. Actually, how about this one? What I Fear.
Yeah, go for it.
What I Fear, and this was written in remembrance of Trayvon Martin and those routinely victimized by racial profiling. What I fear. Are you so afraid of my skin so brown that you use all possible means to keep me down? Are you so afraid you have to lock me up, keep me shackled, kick my butt? I'm not afraid of you. Let me make that clear. Your baseless fear of me is what I fear. Are you so afraid that I look suspicious, that like a rabid dog you attack so vicious? Getting autographs while at the gun show, while your victim marked absent, another no-show. Another black teen, sleep in the mortuary, no remorse, your conscience clean, evil portuary. I'm not afraid of you, let me make that clear. Your baseless fear of me is what I fear. Are you so afraid of the way I talk, You will kill me dead for the way I walk. Are you so afraid that I'll take your power when I simply want to bloom like any other flower? By George, I pray, remove this fear before another murder, a mother's graveside tear. I'm not afraid of you. Let me make that clear. Your baseless fear of me is what I fear.
And I think with that, we can end this podcast and let people go in and bring the book into their lives then. Okay. Thank you both.
Thanks, Jim.
Dr. Lewis Hoffman, Dr. Nathaniel Granger, with Stay Awhile, Poetic Narratives on Multiculturalism and Diversity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching this video presentation by University Professors Press. We encourage you to support authors and small publishing companies by purchasing directly from the publisher or through local independent bookstores. All books published by University Professors Press are available on our website at www.universityprofessorspress.com. You can receive a 10% discount on all our products using the coupon UPPVideo at checkout. That's UPPVIDEO. Follow University Professors Press on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram for information about new releases and special offers.